You're listening to the All Mom Does podcast, where you'll find encouragement, information, and inspiration for the life you're living, the kids you're raising, the romance you're loving, and the faith you're growing. I'm your host, Julie Lyles Carr. Let's jump into this week's episode. You are in for a treat today, my friends. I have Sarah Taylor with me. Sarah is a mom, a wife. She's also a voice that's going to be very familiar to a lot of you because she is on the radio waves up in the Seattle area on Spirit 105.3. Sarah, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it for a while.
Now, I know a lot of our listeners are going to already know you, but there are some who are not going to know you. So fill us in on all the details of your life, who you're married to, the kids, where you hail from. And you know what? I also want to know your favorite ice cream flavor. Let's just throw that in there too.
I love it. We've got like 3 in our freezer right now. So I'll just tell you what's in our freezer.
All right.
We have just the strawberry left of the Neapolitan ice cream. Does that happen to everybody?
Yeah, that's kind of a theme that I do see where you carve out the vanilla and the chocolate. Yeah,
right.
I see that.
So that's going on. We got the mint chocolate chip, and we have the my husband's favorite, the like kind of the Reese's peanut butter cup situation.
Okay.
All gluten-free choices. We'll probably get to that later. And I basically just, it's kind of that free-for-all. How many kids do you have, Julie? 8?
8. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure you're used to it. Like if you want to get in there, you got to beat out all the teenagers before.
Ice cream in this household lasts approximately 14 minutes upon it entering the door. Mm-hmm. And you've got to get really savvy about the way that you hide ice cream, and you're limited because, it's a known quantity. It's going to have to be in a freezer somewhere. The best I've been able to figure out so far is really what I should be doing is just taking it down to the neighbor's house. That's really putting it in a different container and then labeling it chicken gizzards, something like that. That's probably would be the best. But yeah, you're right. Ice cream does have a very fast evaporation rate in this household. I'm sure in yours too. Mint chocolate chip, I'm with you, girl. That makes me feel really good. Tell me about your kiddos.
Okay, so I've got Olivia, and she is 14. Entering high school.
Dun, dun, dun.
Be careful, or I might flip this entire interview back on you for all the tips, because I'm reading a book right now called Love Her Well. I don't remember the. Oh, do you know? I don't know the author, but it's
we interviewed
wonderful.
her author on the show. Well, I'll have to ask Rebecca to get that episode into the show notes for us. But yeah, I've interviewed the author. I wish I could think of her name at the moment. But
I know, me too. Yeah. It's a fabulous book, and so I'm prepping to be the mom of a teenager. My son, Ethan, is 9, and our daughter, Nora, by the time this episode airs, is probably going to have just turned 5. But right now she's 4, and we call her the baby.
The baby. I call my 14-year-old twins the baby, so you are in good company.
Yeah. And then my husband is Joel, and we met when I was 17. And then we lost track of each other for about 7 years and reconnected. And so, we've been married for 15 years. And I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. So this has always been home.
Always home. Okay, now I'm going to have to go back to the story about you and Joel because I'm always fascinated with how people meet. And you get those stories, Sarah, where they encounter someone and they just know that that's it. And from that moment forward, it moves on. And then you have these stories of people who had a chance meeting at one point and then for almost a decade. So did you know that you had some tingly feelings for him the first time you met? Or was it just sort of a, hi, nice to know you?
No, I did.
Okay, you did. And then how did you re-encounter each other 7 years later?
Sure. Okay, so I was in school in a grade with his brother. And so I met him at like a school football game. And so, the older brother of one of my classmates was there. And all the girls were like, oh, look at that. That's Neil's brother. He's so cute. And Joel asked me on a date. I think we went on like 1 or 2 dates. And I did. I had all the tingly feelings. I really enjoyed him. But you know what? I was 17 and I had a lot of those feelings for a lot of different boys. So it was kind of like, how you just move the pots around on the stove when you cook? All right.
Absolutely,
so that was kind of my dating life those years. And so, but I always remembered him. I remember him as the guy that had a plan because the other teenage boys were like, you want to hang out? And Joel, being homeschooled by his mom, like he was like, I would like to take you to a Sonics game. He came, he picked me up, he met me at the door. You know what I mean? Just that difference. Right. And it really stood out because nobody else did that. So I always remembered him as a really nice guy that had a plan. And so then we lost track of each other, and it's a sad story how we met. I had heard, because we went to a small school, so I remembered his family his brother, his sister had all gone to school with me, so I remembered their last name. And when I heard through the grapevine that his mom was sick and had cancer, it was the first time in my life, in my 20s, that a peer of mine had a parent that had cancer. It used to be grandparents that we would hear, but now this was a mother. And so I was just thinking, wow, that's very young. She was just in her early 50s. And then I remember hearing through the grapevine that she had passed away. Something inside of me compelled me to go to that memorial to honor their family. And then just as quickly, something goes, you're not going to go to that. Like, you didn't know her or them well enough. What if they see you there and think, like, what are you doing here? Such a sacred moment for our family, and you're a stranger. So I almost didn't do it. But his mom, Kathy, made beautiful quilts. It was her hobby. And my mom also did the same. And oftentimes they would quilt in the same circles. And so I said to my mom, would you go with me to the memorial? And I felt like that was my permission to go. So we went. Kathy's quilts were all on display. I was there just to honor her life. And I saw Joel at the very end of it. And I shook his hand and I said, I'm so sorry. And I think he must have said something like, Sarah, what are you doing here? And I quickly, I came with my mom. My mom and your mom quilted, And then he got in touch with me about a month later, and he asked me out again, and he had a plan again. And we've sort of been inseparable ever since.
That's really amazing. And, I appreciate you sharing. Sometimes we share our stories of origin, and we try to make it sound like it all came out of all these happy coincidences and all these serendipities, that everything just flew together. And yet it's so beautiful to me that you did listen to that prompting, because again, I think sometimes we can feel like, am I being a pariah? Am I just trying to push my way into a situation, whether that's a romance or that's something for our kids that we're pursuing or whatever? But that's really interesting, being willing to follow that little still small voice and to what it has led to. But what a pivotal moment in which to meet someone and to begin to establish relationship.
Yeah, now, it's not lost. I just want to say this. It's not lost on me that when I look at Kathy's grandchildren, when I look at Olivia, Ethan, and Nora, and I look at Olivia's thick hair, and I'm like, that's Kathy's hair. It's not lost on me that they are here because I re-met her son when she entered eternity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what a beautiful picture of how life continues in the best way. I mean, that's really an exceptional story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, how did you end up in the radio space? Now, you may have heard me tell my story of how I ended up in the radio space, which was I was in a college class. I was finishing up just some extra hours I had to get in completion of a couple of my degrees. And there was a guy in this organizational psychology class or for organizations. We had to give a presentation. I got up, I said whatever I said. And when I sat back down, he said, I really love your voice. And I thought, oh, please, that is the saddest pickup line ever. The reality was he was the general manager of a radio station. He never did take me on a date, but he did give me a job. And that was kind of how I entered into it. I had other friends who were in radio and television, and they went on to do other things. And somehow I ended up in the radio and television space, and that was not my degree path. So I want to hear about yours, how you ended up behind the mic and in front of so many listeners.
I love yours too. Mine was accidental as well. Okay. Well, we call it accidental, but let's say coincidental, divinely appointed. It just goes to show how God has better blueprints for us than we could ever come up for ourselves. Right. So I was in college and I was supposed to declare a major, and I did not know what to declare. I had a lot of interests, but I just knew internally that well, I said to God, it was an angry prayer. You ever had one of those? Uh-huh. I was driving. The irony is I was listening to the radio station as I was driving and praying, crying and saying, why do some people get a calling from you and some don't? Because I'm asking for what mine is. And then I said, I know that you know better than I do, Jesus, what I should do with my life. And I know that your timing is different than ours, but listen, I got to get off my parents' insurance. I got to declare a major. I got to do something here. Yeah. So this is your wide open opportunity, Lord, to speak. Speak. And then I would hear nothing except for the radio in the background. Still, irony. But I was so distraught with it. I ended up getting a general studies degree. Listen to this awesome name that sounds so cool. I got an interdisciplinary arts and sciences degree with an emphasis in society, ethics, and human behavior.
Wow. I mean,
my
sounds
grandpa,
impressive.
it does, but it's a general studies degree. My grandpa called it underwater basket weaving.
Yeah.
And so anyways, okay, so my dad gave me a pity job at the time. I was working as a receptionist and doing Excel spreadsheets, which is the lowest of my skill set. And so it was really a bad fit for me. And so crying in the car, praying. And the radio station would turn those broken prayer cries of my heart. It would comfort me. The music would. And the DJs, I felt like were my friends. I would listen to it every day on my way to the job I didn't like. And I would call into the morning show a lot just to participate. Like, it just felt like an invitation. They'd be talking about a morning topic. I'd be like, I have something to say about that. And I noticed that they would often put me as a caller on when I would call. And I'm like, guess I have a tiny knack for this. It was just fun, right? Anyway, someone called me from the station and said, you won tickets. And I'm like, I don't remember entering a contest, but evidently anyone that called that day got randomly put into a drawing. So I got tickets to the Newsboys at the Puyallup Fair. Didn't even know who the Newsboys were. And almost didn't go. And can we title this episode Almost Didn't
Almost
Go?
Didn't Go. I think that's really the takeaway here.
I have a friend that was like, no, I'll do that with you. And I was like, all right. So we went, pick up our tickets. They come with backstage passes. Cool. I don't know the difference between a crew member and a newsboy. So I go backstage and I see this guy. His name is Mike Tedesco. And he's shaking hands. He clearly works for the station, has the badge, and he's shaking hands of all the people that have won tickets, smiling, full of joy, very exuberant. And I said another prayer in my heart. Jesus, I don't know what you have for me in my career, but can I love what I do the way that man loves what he does? And he makes his way around to me, shakes my hand, and I don't know where it came from, but I blurted out without thinking, do you need an intern? And he said, well, I've got one right now, but, send me your resume. And if a spot becomes available, I'm always looking for more. So, we'll connect. I did. I followed up with it. And a couple weeks later, he called me and said, hey, that previous intern fell through. Would you like to come and interview? And so I got in my car and my hands on the steering wheel. And I remember that drive felt holy. It was like the mothership was calling me home. And I was listening to the radio thinking, I am going to where this music comes from. This music that has helped me feel connected to God when it felt like he's silent in my prayers, but I still have the music to carry me through, songs I relate to, DJs I relate to. I'm going to where that originates. This is holy. I parked in the parking lot and I'm like, Jesus, please let me get this internship until I figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life because I want to be here. That was 19 years ago and I still get to carry the same badge with my picture. Hey, by the way, humbling moment. If you ever want to carry around a picture of 20-year-old you around 40-year-old you's neck, that's something to look at every day.
That'll keep you grounded. That'll keep you real grounded.
I mean, we should at least be updating these at the rate of the DMV, don't you think?
I love that, though, because there are so many times that, particularly, I think if you traffic in the world where you're an ambivert or an introvert, I don't know how you identify, but I know for me, there are a lot of things that I will second guess myself on, like, I don't think I want to go to that. I don't think I want to do the thing. I don't think I want to ask the question. I don't think I want to raise my hand. I don't think I want to put myself out there. And yet so many of those moments for a lot of us, that's exactly what we need to do. Now, there are some of us, and we have to do all this through discernment and through prayer. We shouldn't go. We shouldn't raise our hand, and we probably should zip our lip. And to have the discernment to know the difference is really important. But how powerful that just a willingness to say, all right, I'll go. All right, I'll introduce myself to someone can actually set the course. And it's interesting you bring that up, Sarah, because I think we've made this whole process of trying to discern calling and purpose and all of those things very complex in some ways, or we expect that we will have a burning bush moment. And, I think God can provide those, but sometimes it's just in the little things. How do you encourage people who are saying to you, oh, I would love to get into what you're doing, or I have a dream on my heart that seems impossible. I feel like I should go do this thing or write that thing or speak that thing. And they're looking for really clear lanes about how to make that happen. How do you encourage people to know, hey, hang in there? But it may not always be exactly that clean in terms of how that's revealed.
I mean, I just kind of offer that. Are you praying that blueprint prayer? Are you praying like, what did I say? I said to the Lord, why do some people receive a calling, some don't? I'm asking for what mine is. So I asked for it. I said, I would love to love what I do the way that man loves what he does. And so those were both two things that, I felt like the Lord guided my steps. A lot of times I love when I feel like he downloads to me something instantly, but in both of those things, he didn't say, you're going to be on the radio, you're going to be there for 20 years. Sometimes he speaks like that. But this time it was more just kind of like, I felt like the desires of my heart were honorable, right? So like to pray, can I love what I do the way that man loves what he does? That means take me anywhere, do anything, but give me the desires of my heart, not give me what I think I want, but would you implant in me what you have for me, and then may I desire it and find satisfaction and purpose in what you have.
I love that, because I think so often we start out with the job title or what we think we want. And really, I think at the end of the day, a lot of times, Sarah, what we're really craving is what we think that thing will bring us.
Yeah.
So we think if we get this certain position, it will make us feel validated or known or valued. If we are able to accomplish XYZ, then that's going to give us that sense that, okay, I finally arrived. I'm finally part of the team or whatever that is. So to invert that and say, whatever it is, just show me. Such a powerful way to take a look at that.
Well, and another thing is to have a microphone in front of you, this is it's a holy responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I knew that going in. And even when I started doing like the overnight shift, I remember praying, Jesus, like if I'm ever going to lead your people astray, take the microphone away from me long before that would ever happen. So only allow me this privilege if my heart is in the right place and if my words are in the right place. Otherwise, let somebody else do it that's more qualified. And so I think that, and Brant Hansen, who is just one of my favorite DJs.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
He's great. He said, don't pray for a platform, pray for something to say.
That is powerful. I hadn't heard him say that before. That is amazing. I love that statement. And I think one thing that we always need to be discerning and people need to hear is whether, just because someone's behind a microphone or in a pulpit or on a stage or has the record deal doesn't mean that as listeners, people should just check their own heart and discernment at the door. We always have to be careful about who we're listening to and why. I do think there should be a certain level of transparency and vulnerability on the part of those who are on the platform. And just because they are doesn't mean that everything they have to say is something that we necessarily need to just take in. I know that for a lot of us in the ministry space, to me, the greatest part about having something to say is hopefully equipping other people to understand that God has something to say to them too. Yeah. And it's not because it's coming through me. It's because all of us need to become equipped and self-feeders to a certain point. And the responsibility that comes with having a mic is simply to continue that mission of helping people to encounter God for themselves.
Well, and also what you're saying is that goes beyond just like people that professionally speak for a living. This goes for literally anyone in your circle. Like if you're listening to this right now, be very careful who you give a microphone to in your own life.
Absolutely.
Even in your own circle of friends, household, parents, sometimes what our parents say about us can have a lasting impact, but maybe they said something that wasn't accurate about who you are. And that's still echoing at microphone level in your life. Not necessarily. You get to choose whose words have extra impact for you.
Absolutely. One of my children has a significant hearing loss. And when she was younger, we used a device called an FM system. And it was interesting to me because having had this background in radio, and then God gives me this kid who's struggling to hear my voice. And so what do? We literally end up putting me back on the microphone, Sarah, specifically for this kid. And this device would make my voice 25 dBs higher in her ears over everything else she was getting from her hearing aids. It would amplify my voice. It was fascinating to watch her become more attuned. The reason we did that is because her brain needed to know how to sort sound. Because of the nature of her hearing loss, she would just hear what she could discern and hear kind of all came in as just auditory confusion. And so it was important that she have a voice of the person who was her primary caregiver really speaking to her directly so she would learn to recognize that. But boy, it was a profound metaphor to me. I realized there had been people in my own life that I had handed the FM system to, if you will, and I was letting their voice resonate in a way that was far louder than I really should have given it. So I love that you are reminding people, hey, I want people to come and listen to you on the radio. I want them to hear your wisdom and your heart, but at the same time, I also want them to be discerning. And I love that you sign off on that as well. Now, you've been on an interesting journey as a family, and you and I had a chance to talk a few months ago, just mom to mom, just parenting, because your little one began to have some real challenges and you guys didn't know where it was coming from. You didn't know what it was. And you got into search mode and you found out some interesting things about the way that your Nora is wired. So tell listeners about that journey.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank you because what you just mentioned was kind of like, I love that you, amidst your busy schedule and raising 8 children, planning some weddings, this was pre-pandemic, I still texted you and was like, do you have time? And it's like, you made time to meet me in a place where I was very afraid, because Nora was having a lot of health issues and I was afraid of what the future would look like. I was doing all the what ifs, and you really helped me feel like I could handle it because, you've experienced some of your own. We don't have the exact same situation, but we still have enough of a parallel that, you offered me a lot of encouragement off the microphone during a time where I really needed it. So thank you.
I was honored. Thank you for reaching out.
And secondly, yes, Nora was diagnosed with celiac disease, which for someone unfamiliar, it's an autoimmune disease triggered by even a crumb of gluten. I was unfamiliar before she received the diagnosis. And, when they were she was failing to thrive, diagnosed with failure to thrive, hadn't gained weight in a year. She was only 2, began getting ill, very pale. It was clear that something was wrong. And so when they first did the full panel workup, a cancer diagnosis possibility was on the table. So I remember that night, I didn't sleep. My whole body was in agony. And waiting for those results, nothing worse. So when it came back that her TTG numbers for celiac were high, I felt I could have danced. I was like, and so then my husband and we went into the pantry. We just started tossing everything with gluten into the trash. And I went into full-on research mode, which is what I do and what we do as moms, right? When our children's health is on the line, we will stop at nothing to restore them to full health. And so our whole household went gluten-free. Even her older siblings, it was beautiful. It was kind of it was prayed over us. My friend Kathy got a word for us, and she said, I see your family on an adventure. And it's interesting how that's come to pass because Olivia and Ethan are on board. They help me read labels at the store. Everyone kind of went into protection mode over our baby.
Right.
And because even with, it sounds kind of simple, like to someone listening, okay, just quit gluten. Well, do you know that gluten is in certain toothpaste? Do you know that it's in soy sauce? Yeah. Do you know that it's in Play-Doh?
It's in Twizzlers. Can we talk about that a minute? That just really still gets me. Really? Not even Twizzlers are safe.
And then, of course, because some people are gluten-free by choice, there's this blurry line where it becomes kind of like, oh, well, can't she just have a little, and all that stuff. And to be celiac, again, is an autoimmune condition. And, as she grows, she'll have to advocate for herself. But right now, it feels like I have celiac because she's only 4. And although she's, thank God for the company or the nonprofit organization that has come up with the gluten-free label on packaging. Yeah. Man, am I ever thankful for that because that's very easy helpful to teach a small child. Look for that.
Right.
And so I'm very thankful. In fact, now I support them financially as a nonprofit. It's interesting how that stuff becomes so important to you. And I listen to podcasts all the time on the future of 5 to 10 years. They have a hope that there will be a pill that someone can take before you eat at a restaurant so that if there's cross-contamination, you still order the gluten-free meal, but if there's cross-contamination, such as, a crouton went on that salad and somebody plucked it off. Right. It won't do that intestinal damage. So I'm so hopeful that there is a very smart person that is headed to MIT that has made it their life's goal to not only find a cure, but just, something like that in the future, because our family would benefit greatly from the stress that is caused. I still haven't gone to a restaurant to trust like that they would properly make something correct for her.
Right.
That's the next thing I need to branch out on. But listen, I was a server at Red Robin when I was 18, and I remember that I wasn't always as vigilant as I should have been. And so I have a hard time placing her health in the hands of others, but that's something that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But I will say the pandemic was actually really good for her health because she was home for a year and our house is completely gluten-free. So when she was first diagnosed, her TTG numbers were over 2,500. 2,500. Okay, a normal person's is supposed to be under 14.
Wow.
So when we figured it all out, and shout out to Dr. Lee at Seattle Children's Hospital and the program he runs there. Man, do they help. Man, are they wonderful as a resource. You know, we got her numbers down 64, then down to 36 or whatever. And just most recently, we got her numbers back and she's 7.
Oh, that's incredible. And it shows you just how much is out there that is encountered by people with celiac, even when you're being very vigilant. And, you know, just to walk into the world, there is just gluten everywhere. And, you know, Sarah, it's interesting because with the rise of these different immune issues for children dietary-wise, with things like peanut allergies and on, I've encountered people, and I haven't had one who's had the fullest extent of the diagnosis you've had. I do have a child who's now an adult who has multiple food allergies, and it has been a battle for a long time. But I've always been fascinated with people who blow it off or act like it's not that big a deal or not that difficult to deal with. Have you found good sympathy within your community? And have you had people who've surprised you, who maybe have been like,
absolutely.
Oh, whatever, you know?
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that because it's interesting. It has been the ultimate gift of hospitality when the few, 1 or 2 people in our circle have gone above and beyond. My friend Callie comes to mind. Her family doesn't have any food allergies. But when her daughter Emerson, who's the same age as Nora, had a birthday party, Callie reached out to me and said, what candy is safe for Nora in the piñata? What foods can I provide? The entire party will be gluten-free. Because she wanted a guest at her daughter's party to be able to fully experience everything that a 4-year-old experiences.
Right.
I cried.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I cried.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, the fact that you are a busy mom of 2 girls are taking into account what my daughter might need was the ultimate gift of hospitality. When somebody makes their house a safe place for my daughter to be and takes the mental burden of my vigilance and gives me a 2-hour break, it is restorative. It speaks Jesus to me. And also my mom made her whole kitchen gluten-free. She bought a special cupboard area just for Nora's food so that when my husband and I took a trip to New York with our daughter to see some Broadway shows and just to make a memorable experience for her, our oldest, my mom took my kids for 5 days. And she wanted to alleviate my concern. And I cried. I cry when people show love in that way.
Yeah. But it is a beautiful way that I think we bear one another's burdens and we care for one another. Even if you don't understand some of these things, you don't understand the challenges that another parent of yours within your community is going through, to be willing to accommodate and say, hey, I may not have all the answers and I may not completely understand this, but I'm willing to walk alongside you as an ally to help you in this journey of what you're walking through is really huge. You know, we had times that with 2 of ours who are differently abled that they were excluded from some things because it was people didn't want the inconvenience. We also had times that they were shown tremendous support. Yeah. And then we had times that we had to walk a fine line, Sarah, because sometimes people in their best efforts show up with pity. And pity's not really the thing that honors in these situations. Inclusivity and a willingness to adapt is. And it's something I think we still are struggling with in a lot of our faith circles, in children's church expressions and all kinds of things, to know how to hit that mark well. There is a lane where it really lives and people feel honored and seen and appreciated for exactly who they are.
But we have work to do.
Yeah, we got work to do. There are 2 sides. There are ditches either side of that response that are pretty deep and strewn with some shards. And I do think that unless you've walked it, you can't know. And to give grace is really important in those situations, and to be willing to learn about what's happening, what can be accommodative. And I think it's always a great lesson. I have a real passion for this, that our kids who are neurotypical or dietary typical or whatever, they only benefit when they learn the compassion and accommodation for people who are a little different than they are. That's good for everybody. And so when I hear these arguments sometimes about, well, we just want kids to have a normal experience, I'm like, well, however you define normal, good luck. But that is not the world at large. And so when we can learn that place of compassion in places like our faith communities, in the preschool classroom, that's a really important thing. Yeah. I love what your friend had for you in terms of a word, that word adventure. Because sometimes when you have a kid who's diagnosed with a challenge, or you have a child who is experiencing dietary challenges or allergies, or they've got a learning issue that's really difficult, or they have some behavioral issues that are different than other children, we oftentimes look at the challenge of that, or we look at, let's face it, sometimes the disappointment cycle, the grief cycle as a parent, to watch your kid have to go through something really hard, for your child to be different than what you thought they were going to be. And yet that word adventure, I got to tell you, Sarah, now I'm now at the place where one of mine who had significant challenges is an adult. She's married. Like we've done it. We're through. The other one who had a stroke at birth, we are still in process. We still have those days that are tough. We still have those experiences that I go, oh, I never thought about that. Like, oh yeah, we're going to have to figure out a workaround for that. But in all of that, I can tell you now from this perspective, it is an adventure. It has taken us places. It has allowed us to meet people. It has allowed us to have encounters that I could have never imagined. How has keeping that adventure perspective been helpful? Because you guys are still really in the weeds with a lot of this. I mean, this diagnosis just came 24 months ago, something like that. Is that right?
Yep.
So, you're not really necessarily into the full, okay, I got the choreography, I got the dance down.
Yeah.
How is that one word adventure helped frame this?
I think that one's something like, I would call it aspirational. Like I'm still trying to fully embrace that. Because when I hear adventure, it's funny. I was telling my husband, I'm like, I used to be adventurous, like when I was younger, but man, with every year of parenthood, I have become less and less so. Yeah. And it's kind of like that vigilance I talked about. That's probably my biggest crutch. In fact, I would call it more than a crutch. A lot of times it really gets in my way. I don't look at things as adventurous. To me, adventure is equivalent with danger. Let's avoid it. Let's be safe. Let's wrap you all in a bubble. How about we wear helmets all the time? Shall we wear helmets all the time, guys? Great idea, Great idea. And they call me safety mom. So there's a lot of good things about that. But also lately, my prayer has been, Jesus, help me see adventure as a good thing, instill it in my children, not be so vigilant that we miss out on opportunities. And so I have to work at that. That's another reason I probably look exhausted half the time, is because inside Sarah is going, nope, don't want to, pass, too hard, not safe, all that. And then I am asking the Lord by his grace to overcome that so that I can view it that way. So that one's very much still in process. And then I have to do the day at a time thing, because I do get nervous when when you mentioned how sometimes your kids have felt left out. Man, I know the days are going to come where all the kids are having the pizza party, the cupcakes, and she feels odd man out. And I'm like, can't go there, because that's not currently happening. Currently what's happening is she is well taken care of. She has friends that get it. Because what if she doesn't feel left out? What if someone else makes that accommodation? You know what I mean? Like, what if she's tough as nails and that's her personality and that doesn't bother her? The one day at a time, and then asking the Lord to help me continue to see it as an adventure. I think the reason that word was given to me would be because I needed it.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. And I love that you have put it up there on the spiritual refrigerator with a magnet, if you will, that here's where we're headed. And we don't get it perfect every day. We don't always frame things that way, but that's where we're headed. I think that is just exceptional. Sarah, I could just sit and talk with you. We've got to have you back on again. I could just chat with you for such a long time. I want listeners to go, even if you're not in the Pacific Northwest region and you don't feel like you have access on your car radio to Spirit 105.3, you do have access to it online, so you can catch Sarah there. And where is a place on the social medias where listeners can go and learn more about your story, learn more about your journey with Nora and all the things?
Sure. If they want to see me post one time every 6 months, they are welcome to follow my Instagram, which is, oh my word, hold on. Seriously, hold on. I will say this. Can we cross-promote podcasts? Because I've really been enjoying doing that. Okay. I kind of followed in your footsteps. I don't know what episode you're on. I know you're in the hundreds, Julie.
Yeah, we are closing in on 200 episodes. I can't remember which this one is.
All right, I think I'm still single digits. I might be at 10 by the time this airs. But my podcast is called Passion Meets Purpose. And it's all about kind of what we talked about earlier. The name is self-explanatory. It's what are you good at? What talents did God put in you at a young age? And then how do you use those things to give back to the world?
Love that.
And so, we've talked with Scott Hamilton, the backflipping Olympic figure skater who has breezed through 3 brain tumors. He talks a lot about how his mom, in fact, I'd love to you've had him on your podcast, Julie.
I've had him on. He's a fantastic.
Did he talk about his mom? He basically did all this to make his mom proud. He loved his mama.
Yeah. He's amazing. Yes, absolutely. Listeners, you go check that out on your podcast.
So Passion Meets Purpose.
Yeah.
What is my Instagram handle? Sarah Taylor Radio is
Sarah Taylor Radio.
Nobody's going to want to go find me on there, Julie, because it's just does she use a dial-up modem to
I'm going right now because I want to see what the once every 6 months. I got to see what this hero image is.
Well, the latest is Nora with her hands on her hip getting those celiac numbers back at Seattle Children's,
which is amazing, and that
was post-worthy.
That just ties a bow on our conversation. That's fantastic. So it's Sarah Taylor Radio. You can go find her there on Instagram. I know Rebecca will put more links and ways that you can find the podcast and all of these things. Sarah, thanks so much for all you do, for your heart. And I'm just excited to see more about the adventure that you're on.
Honored, Julie. It's always been my pleasure to not only listen to your podcast and to know you behind the scenes, but to also have the opportunity to share this story. I hope that at least one sentence or something pings the person who's listening. My prayer over you is that you would hear from the Lord over whatever you have in prayer with him today.
Check out the show notes for all the links, info, and other goodness from this week's episode with a big thank you to our content coordinator, Rebecca. I've got a request. Please go like and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really does make a difference in helping other people find the show. And I'll see you next week here at the All Mom Does podcast.